Um, so if you, Joel, just want to introduce the two companies that you own really quickly, and then we'll get started learning more about while I while I pick off some of the dirt on this guy. He was just outside and it was raining a little bit. So, but anyways, yeah, let us know about the two companies that you own. They're both Austin-based companies, right?
Sure. So yeah, it's Casa Brazil Coffees and Little City Coffee Roasters. So Casa Brazil started as a cultural center, a Brazilian cultural center in Austin in 2004, and then Little City has been around since 1992, and then we took it over the roasting company in 2012. Just to
That's
going to
so
close
cool.
down
Yeah.
our Congress location, and we wanted to keep it alive. I
Oh,
thought it was
yeah.
pretty important thing for Austin. So
Absolutely. And I'm married to an Austinite, a true Austinite, born and raised here. And he, and so many people are so grateful to still have Little City around. And I know you are calling us, or you're calling in from Brazil today, right? Which is super exciting.
yeah, I live down
Yeah,
here.
yeah, which is wonderful. To still be able to maintain your ties to Austin like that too. What originally brought you to Brazil and got you interested in coffee?
Sure. So Brazil got me interested in coffee. Brazil and studying philosophy in college got me into coffee.
Oh,
I
cool.
came to Brazil. I grew up in Iowa when I was a soccer player, and my coach was Brazilian. One of my coaches was Brazilian. So I came down when I was 14 to Brazil in the early 90s, and then came back several times. So I ended up playing for Grêmio, a team down here in Brazil, and then went to college and got injured, and my soccer career ended. But the passion for Brazil stayed.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, so you, what exactly got you excited about coffee, or was it just, kind of being able to hang out in Brazil and get to taste those specific blends?
Sure. So with coffee, it was just really I just love the flavor of it. So I started drinking it when I was in high school and was a foreign exchange student down here. I here it's part of life, not necessarily always the best coffee that they drink here. Like many producing countries, they export a lot of their best, but it is part of the way of life down here. It's kind of Brazil and the Italian culture maybe have that about, you'll say to somebody, let's go get a coffee. So it's kind of your time out, your personal time during the day to connect with other people. And we don't, maybe like let's grab a beer in the United States would be synonymous to that, but it's a little bit different. And in Brazil and it's Italy, they have that. And I really, really like that aspect of it.
That's really cool, and that's cool to also be bringing that kind of a more special experience around coffee to the States and to Texas in particular, right? That's really great to have that sentiment, being brought here to Austin. What are the services and products that Casa Brazil and Little City provide?
Sure. So with both, we offer, we have coffee in various forms. We have cold brew products, and we have the whole bean and ground coffee. And I think what makes it unique and what we really went to town with is just the sourcing of the coffee. So we work directly with growers. We've partnered up with different coffee growers with Casa Brazil here in Brazil. We've been doing it, sourcing from here for 15 years. And then with Little City all throughout the world. So we work directly with growers. We offer seasonal coffees. So coffee is the seed that grows within the fruit on a tree. And so it's seasonal, and like all seeds, it deteriorates over time. And so it's really, once you harvest that coffee, you pick it from the tree, you need to make sure that you dry it well and you store it well, and that you bring it in and roast it, because it will, with age, it will fade. So that's really the challenge and the fun of it, is to find those coffees, work with the grower, find the growers, make the partnerships, work with the growers, and then bring the coffees in and try to bring them to people at their potential.
And that's so interesting. It sounds like a lot of different moving pieces. And it sounds like maybe even a fun puzzle to be involved in, to kind of keep everything working and the different time, the timing of everything and that sort of thing.
Yeah. it's logistics, it's maritime freight, it's yeah, lots of different aspects. Yeah, every country is a little bit different, and that's what makes it fun. If you're, exporting, we just got a new coffee in from Ethiopia. We have a great partner there, but it's a bureaucratic country that takes a lot of time and a lot of paperwork to get through. Whereas we got a Mexican micro lot in, and he just put it on the boat in Veracruz, and up it came, and it was a lot easier to bring it in. He's at a port. We're closer. Ethiopia is a landlocked country. It's bureaucratic, so it really makes it's challenging in so many different ways. But
it sounds like it. It sounds so challenging. I mean, you're not only working with the processes of harvesting the coffee, but also with the governments and with transportation and
logistics and maritime freight and it's most big companies have a logistics person involved. We have I do a little bit, but mostly Eric, our director of coffee, does a lot of that. Spends a lot of his time trying to figure those things out. This Ethiopian coffee, we ended up air freighting it from Ethiopia just because we wanted it and it wasn't coming. So and it's a nice coffee, so we put it on a plane, and he did our part on a plane and shipped it over.
That's awesome. Well, what changed for you after the pandemic hit, or what changed for Little City?
Sure. So, a lot personally. I was traveling a lot, and I have a wonderful family that I get to spend more time with now. I'm not, hopefully they feel the same. And for the business, we had focused on restaurants and coffee shops. So we never really, I think Little Cities is fairly well known in old school Austin, since the population for Austin has changed, and the shop hasn't been around for almost 10 years now. I think we didn't really focus on that aspect of it. And so we came up with, the thought was always on sourcing coffees. And we don't have a retail shop. Casa, Brazil, we don't have a retail shop. When I got into coffee, my passion was the agricultural part of it. And I had come down here to Brazil in 2014 to do a master's degree in coffee processing. So once the pandemic hit, we really had to focus on thinking about the customer experience. And then we came up with for Little City, well, why don't we freshly roast the coffee? How can we, we thought about it from how do you beat Instacart and how do you beat Amazon? We beat them on quality, but people have to try the coffee to know the quality aspect of it, I think, because everybody says they have, everyone's got the best coffee, and that terminology there is most sustainable. All that terminology is quite similar. And so we thought, well, let's freshly roast it. Ironically, like, coffee's not at its best state right after you roast it. It needs to, it needs to sit and rest for 24 to 48 hours, depending on the coffee, but it needs to sit a bit before it gets its peak. But at least at that point, you get time zero, So the thought was, if you order the coffee by midnight, you go to the cupboard and you realize that you're out of coffee late at night, and you think to yourself, then we can, if you put the order in, then we can roast it and deliver it to the next business day. And that's time zero. So I think it's pretty special. Now, the coffees are great.
Really
we
cool.
work with growers. They're seasonal. We really care.
That's really wonderful. And it sounds like, all businesses are pivoting, but it sounds like, that's really special for all of us to be able to directly get your coffee now. And let me tell you, not to do a quick commercial or anything, but we have a bunch of Little City coffee, and it is so good. This is the Congress Avenue roast. I can smell it right now, so I'm really excited about it. But I really recommend it, trying out Little City Coffee, and also going onto their Instagram. You guys have been doing some really wonderful Instagramming, social media work. I know there's lots of giveaways planned coming up too. So if you guys don't follow Little City Coffee yet, definitely go over there. You get lots of, giveaways and fun things. And you also get to learn a lot more about the company and the product and the coffee, and also just support such a wonderful company. So head over there to their social media accounts. Absolutely. Well, I know a large part of why you guys are able to get such great coffee is because you are a processing specialist for the Coffee Quality Institute. Can you tell us what that means to be a processing specialist?
Sure. So, great coffee. It takes a lot to produce great coffee. So I think a lot of times we have the impression is out there. You had that show on TV where he went to the most dangerous parts of the world and discovered these coffees. But in many ways, that's quite condescending, to the coffee growers.
Yeah.
Coffee growing is very difficult. You have to know what cultivar to plant, depending on your climate. You have to know what treatments for the soil, the amount of shade, the pruning programs. So many things involved in coffee, and what I really enjoyed was the post-harvest processing part. So how do you harvest the coffee, and then how do you dry it? Oh,
So sorry to interrupt you.
Who was that one?
This is Bugs Bunny. He was especially excited about the coffee.
Oh.
So keep going though. No, I'm super. Yeah, keep going, please.
So how coffee is a fruit that grows on a tree. So how you harvest that fruit, the state of maturation, how it's harvested, and then how you dry the green seed, or the coffee bean is a seed inside that fruit. So how you do that will impact the flavor of the coffee. Whether it has a great impact, whether you're doing intentional fermentation of the coffee, the type of fermentation you're doing, if you're doing an anaerobic fermentation, if you're fermenting it while it's in the fruit, if you're pulping the fruit and just fermenting while it has the mucilage or the pulpy part around it still. All of those things impact the flavor of the coffee. How well it's dried, you need to get it down to 11% moisture content. So how well you dry it will impact the flavor of the coffee. The packaging then you store it in. Coffee is hygroscopic, so it exchanges moisture with the atmosphere. So if you store it in high relative humidity, low relative humidity, all that stuff. I grew up in Iowa, and I remember I would always see those grain silos, and I just thought that's just good. I didn't think anything about it. I just thought that was the landscape of what I grew up in. And then I came down to do that master's degree, and one of those most interesting courses was about dimensioning aeration in silos. Like, how do you aerate grain depending on the moisture content of the grain? And I just thought, man, Joel, the 15-year-old you would be so disappointed in the 40-year-old you. Like,
oh my God.
You were going to be Pele or Bob Dylan or somebody, and now you're getting your kicks from dimensioning grain silos.
I think that the coffee world though is really benefiting from this and from the connections that you're able to make with a lot of these growers, and then provide some really excellent coffee. So although the 15-year-old you might have been disappointed, I think everybody else is super excited to have the coffee services and just this wonderful quality coming out of Little City. So that was a big part of it, right? The connections that you make as a processing specialist. Can talk about kind of how that plays into Little City.
Sure. So for example, I met a really incredible coffee processor from Colombia. So that Congress Avenue blend, Colombia is on the equator, so they have 2 harvests a year in Colombia. They have the harvest and then the mitaca, their fly crop. So to keep it seasonal, we work with him to produce a really nice, clean, bright, citric, caramelly coffee. And we work with him to bring it in 2 times a year. So it's never more than 6 months off of harvest for our blends. I was really, so many great projects. Through our Ethiopian coffee, I met a gentleman, Robo Kadane, who is an Ethiopian that lives in Washington, D.C., but he grew up in Dila in Ethiopia, and he started an export company. And so with that Ethiopian coffee, we were able to work with him, and I went over to Ethiopia. Eric, our director of coffee, has been over there twice, and go back to the farm level, the grower level in Ethiopia, and trace it all the way through. And because in Ethiopia, that's quite difficult. They usually sell to mills. You have to go through the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, through the USAID. So, the United States gets a lot of flack, perhaps justifiably so, for some of our foreign policy decisions. But the U.S. also does good. And one of the great things the U.S. did was the work in Myanmar through Winrock International, the CQI, the Coffee Quality Institute. and really the hard work of the growers. I consult with processing, but a lot of times I feel like the marathon coach who just says, okay, you need to run 20 miles today and I'll be back in 2 hours. So the growers are the ones doing all the hard work. But Myanmar, emerged from 50 years of isolation, and such kind, sweet people, such a beautiful country, and producing unbelievable coffees. So they have a really great atmosphere for producing naturally processed coffees, which is when you dry the coffee with all the fruit around it, because it's very cool and you have that Himalayan air that comes down in Myanmar. So it gets quite cold. It gets down to sometimes 3-4 degrees Celsius at night in the highlands. But it's dry, and so you can really slowly dry the coffee and get these beautiful coffees from Myanmar. So the Thai Gan that we have, it's through Melanie Edwards, is an American that's been over there working for 15 years, and so she started Behind the Leaf with others, and she started Behind the Leaf and started working with different communities. So that one of the communities she works with is the Thai Gan community, and Zaza Tun is the head of that community, and such kind, sweet people and just beautiful coffees. So that's another one through the CQI that through the work of the CQI.
That's really great.
With growers.
And what was it that USAID was able to provide, or what role, I guess, were they able to play with the coffee growers?
What, USAID? Mm-hmm. So USAID funded the project. So there was was a supply chain project to develop the supply chains.
Oh, wonderful.
In Myanmar.
Okay.
So it was actually, I just got done reading, oh my goodness, Ben Rhodes, what's the name of the book? But he of it. So he talks about how how the decision was made by the Obama administration to support Myanmar and provide them funding with Aung San Suu Kyi and help them emerge from 50 years of isolation. And the Windrock International, based out of Little Rock, Arkansas, they implemented the funding, and then the Coffee Quality Institute went in and worked with the communities on producing clean coffees and implementing how to build a raised bed, how to dry the coffees, how to dry mill the coffees. And we helped, but it's really, the growers over there. Another one is Saiwan Meng from Greenland, Fiha, just so many great people over there. If anyone watching this an hour later ever has the opportunity, it's a magic, both Ethiopia as well and Myanmar, they're just such magical places.
That's great. No, that's so wonderful. You're able to travel to so many places and also, make those connections and bring that back to Little City. That's really wonderful. Is there any part of that coffee processing process or growing process that you think most affects the taste of the bean?
Sure, and I'll try not to go down the get.
I was going to say that's probably really difficult. It's probably all the processes.
Well, it's so first of all, if you pick the maturation of the coffee fruit when you pick it is important. So just like an unripe banana tastes, an unripe coffee fruit has astringency to it. You have higher levels of chlorogenic acid. The coffee fruit is a drupe. Which means that it's indehiscent, so it doesn't split and open up for its seed. It needs an animal to come and consume it. And so if you think about how it developed, a lot of those aspects are tied to it. So it tastes astringent. It's not good to eat before it reaches physiological maturation, right? The tree doesn't want an animal to come and eat it until that seed can germinate and form a different plant somewhere else. So it tastes bitter. The fruit doesn't taste good until it's ripe, and then it gets very sweet. You have the sugars. It turns red so the animals can see it. It tastes sweet. It goes from a hard stone texture to a ripe fruit. That's just like all ripe fruit. So that's one of the main ones, is only picking ripe fruit or only processing ripe fruits. The other one is if you're going to remove the seed and dry the seed, or do you want to dry the fruit? If you dry the fruit, what happens is you have fermentation, and then the volatiles will pass through into the bean and stick to the bean. So natural, those are called natural or dry processed coffees. And those taste sweeter. They taste sweeter not because the sugars don't actually migrate in, right? Sucrose is kind of a big molecule, and the water's moving in the opposite direction, but it's fermentation. And really a lot of our perceived sweetness is from the retronasal. And it takes credit for the tongue. You say, oh, that tastes sweet. That tastes sweet like sugar cane. Well, that's your nose telling you it tastes sweet like sugar cane. So it's just a small amount of those volatiles, of those fruity esters, can have a huge impact on quality and on
That's so interesting.
So that IPA Gone coffee is a great example of a really complex natural. It tastes a little bit like oolong tea because it has kind of a fermenty aspect to it. It's got some pineapple, which is a specific fruity ester compound that it has. So.
Very cool. Well, do you have a favorite of your blends, of your coffee blends?
Oh, they're kind of like children.
Yes. Yes. I get the question about the animals too. Yeah. So I'm going to, pivot that one too. They're all my babies. Do you have? I know exactly. Yeah. There's no favorites. So all of them. So you recommend people try all of them basically. And I'm just going to do a quick shout out because I'm currently drinking Congress Avenue by Little City. This is a great blend. Highly recommend. But yeah, so you just like them all?
I do. I mean, it depends on. I like the variety, right? Then I like sometimes I want a kind of a floral, citricy Yirgacheffe and Ethiopian. Sometimes I want a really funky, fruity coffee. Sometimes I just want kind of nutty and chocolatey. So, it varies.
And you probably know the stories and the people behind each of the coffees, right? Which probably makes a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I think that we talked a little bit about it before, but I think it's really important to understand that the people that produce coffees are human beings that merit a lot of respect. I think a lot of times that job has historically been done in developing countries by oppressed populations. So I think like the hand picking of coffee, it shouldn't be glamorized all that much, but those people, the good coffee farmers, have to know a lot of things, kind of like corn farmers. And I grew up in Iowa. If you're a corn farmer, it's a shrewd business. You have to really know a lot about so many different things, about the weather patterns, about soil science, about plant physiology. And good coffee growers are no different. They have to know all of that. So we have these images of Juan Valdez with a mule handpicking coffee, and we talked about that. In Colombia, that Juan Valdez, to them, I think a lot of times in the U.S. we view that as kind of a simpleton campesino, but really Juan Valdez is a source of pride. It would be kind of like the Texan cowboy to us. We don't really condescend to, hopefully not, right? We don't condescend to the Texan cowboy.
Yeah, part of our history. Yeah,
he has to know a lot of things and has. That skill set. So I think that's so important when the key to life, right? And so many different things, but the key to sourcing great coffee is relationships. It's not, I have a master's degree in coffee. I'm not going to go over and tell Ephraim Sabati in Burundi how to grow his coffee. He knows how to grow his coffee well. And I just want to work with him to help find a home for his coffee in Austin, Texas, and then figure out the logistics of, Burundi's another one. How do you get the coffee? It's a landlocked country. How do you get the coffee at optimal freshness to Austin, Texas? So
that's really cool. Well, on that note, how can people order coffee from Little City? Where should they go?
Sure. So the best place is our website. So if you go to the website and order now, we will deliver the coffee to you tomorrow. So it's next business day, so not Saturdays and Sundays. But if you order on there, and we're quite responsive on social media. So if you have any questions about what flavor profiles, the Congress, I agree with you. I love the Congress. It was designed to be a very approachable coffee that's got some complexity there if you want it, but it's a very drinkable coffee. So that's a great place to start. It's a lighter roast. Most of our roasts are lighter because we we think that's the best way. Once you start carbonizing some of the coffee, you lose some of the complexity. But we do have the darker roast as well. There's nothing wrong with the dark roast coffee. So we have, Republic, we have Grackle, which are darker roast coffees.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and so did Bugs. Bugs is really excited. He wants some of that Congress Avenue blend. So
yes,
we'll have to do that.
I'd love to have his old factory there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they have an incredible sense of smell.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, I'll have him talk to you later on about maybe a job as a cupper.
Oh, you can train him or identification. That'd
be perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. I think that sounds like a good partnership. But thank you guys all for joining us, and thank you again, Joel, for being on. And don't forget to check out Little City, their Instagram, their website, their Facebook. They're doing some really fun stuff. Definitely follow them. And bye, Joel. Thank you again.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, everyone.